After travelling over 5,800 miles, I find myself here in Thailand. So far I have spent one night in Bangkok and I have found the city absolutely delightful. I am however slightly disappointed though, as I am yet to see a bloody tiger uppercut and I still haven't even seen a Thai ladyboy. What's going on? Anyway, since my crazy global adventures have resumed, it's now time to play some more handhelds around the world, starting today with the Neo Geo Pocket Color. Let me start off by telling you all about the history of this contraption. All the way back in 1978, SNK was founded, a company created initially to develop software and hardware components for business clients. This venture, however, was ended early on in the company's life, and they quickly turned their attention to the arcades. Between 1979 and 1981, SNK released the arcade games Osmo Wars, Safari Rally and Vanguard. However, by the time 1986 came around, indecisive SNK jumped over to console game development and became a third-party licensee for Nintendo, releasing the Ikari Warriors series of games. By the time 1989 came around, SNK decided that they wanted to try and reinvent the arcade market by creating arcade cabinets in which could use interchangeable game cartridges. This was known as the Multi-Video Game System, aka the NVS. This new practice was so innovative that it helped keep arcades alive. SNK's next innovation was that they used this technology to release their own home console. To do this, they used the same motherboard, which was fortunately flexible enough for home use. This new console, known as the Neo Geo AES, was the most powerful video games console ever created at the time. However, with great power comes great responsibility, and unfortunately for SNK, any responsible person was not willing to pay the expensive price tag for the system or the games. The library of games for this thing are near perfect home conversions, keeping the price insanely high to collect games for this bloody thing even to this day. Despite the home console being a commercial failure, SNK decided to try their hand at the handheld market and attempted to compete against the Game Boy. The Neo Geo Pocket debuted in Japan and smaller Asian markets in October of 1998. This monochrome handheld featured a crystal display, 20-hour battery life and an internal save battery. It was technically superior to the Game Boy in every single way. The system had some initial success, however with the lack of games the public quickly began to lose interest. However, the most damaging mistake of all for this system was that they failed to recognise that the Game Boy Color was just around the corner. So, just 2 months after the Neo Geo Pocket's release, Nintendo had a superior handheld on the market. To SNK's credit though, they returned to their drawing board and returned once again as quick as ever, and by March 1999 they came back with the Neo Geo Pocket Color. This new platform features an impressive reflective colour TFT screen and a monstrous 40-hour battery life, using just a mere 2 AA batteries. This system even featured an impressive link-up function which allowed it to be paired with the Sega Dreamcast. The handheld was released in the Western world in June of 1999 and featured a fairly impressive launch lineup of games. The system sadly didn't fare too well in the United States. Most stores were not even selling the handheld at launch, and even when they were selling them, most staff knew nothing about the platform, and for some stupid reason SNK used up all their marketing energy promoting the bloody thing on the internet instead. Between the United States and Asia, the system only managed to shift 250,000 units and was quickly becoming a failure. SNK launched the system in Europe as of October 1999. Overall, they didn't fare too well in Europe sales-wise either. However, they did finally manage to get one part of this campaign right. The machine was in fact marketed fairly well in the UK and managed to shift another 100,000 units in just my country alone. So therefore, it was a fairly popular handheld in my region. But let's be honest, our games market in the UK has generally always been different to the rest of the world for some reason. I guess we must just prefer the finer things in life. Overall, the Neo Geo Pocket Color was a technical marvel in its time, and the 16-bit system was in some ways far superior to the Game Boy Color. The screen had better colour visuals, improved visibility, and it had a much larger screen. Even the platform's micro-switch thumb pads offered far more precision than the Game Boy's Color D-pad. In many ways, the Neo Geo Pocket Color was far ahead of its rivals and deserved to go on to have a much more fruitful life than the system received. But speaking of great tech is nothing without great games to go with it. So let's take a look at some of the most fantastic games on the Neo Geo Pocket Color. Yeah! Briefly, before we get to that, I want to thank two of my show supporters for donating me these lovely games. A huge thanks to Score Avensis from Essex, England, and Brian Trester from the USA. Thanks for helping this little channel push forward. Metal Slug First Mission was released worldwide on the system throughout 1999 and the year 2000. Metal Slug's first mission plays similarly to other Metal Slug games, which were made famous in the arcade. However, obviously the graphics are toned down for the Neo Geo Pocket Color's hardware. This scaled down version manages to capture the Metal Slug spirit extremely well. Like its arcade equivalents, the level design throughout this game is flawless. The game can get very difficult at times, but the game is good enough to keep you coming back to it. The game features some fantastic animations on the small screen. The great locations on the small screen paired with decent music and sound effects make this one of the essential titles to own on the Neo Geo Pocket Color. Sonic Pocket Adventure is a 1999 platform game in the Sonic the Hedgehog series developed by SNK. It was released worldwide throughout 1999 and the year 2000. This was only the second ever game of the Sonic series ever to be released on a non-Sega video games console, the first being Sonic Jam on the Gamecom. The game is similar in level design and gameplay to Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Sega Mega Drive, but with mostly new bosses. It also includes a few graphics from the original Sonic the Hedgehog, as well as music from Sonic the Hedgehog 3, Sonic & Knuckles and Sonic Jam. In addition to the single player mode, Sonic the Hedgehog Pocket Adventure allows multiplayer gaming for 2 players. In order to compete, both players are required to have a Neo Geo Pocket Color and a copy of the game, and 1 link cable. Player 1 is always Sonic, whilst player 2 is Tails miles per hour. Unlike other Sonic games, Tails could not fly using his tails in this game. Sonic Pocket Adventure received very positive reviews. The game is praised for the single player mode being familiar to the original 3 16-bit games, and the game features all-round fantastic graphics, sound and gameplay. It is probably one of the most impressive looking handheld games of its day. King of Fighters Round 2, released in 1999, is the only game from the King of Fighters series released for the Neo Geo Pocket Color. It is the sequel to King of Fighters Round 1 for the Neo Geo Pocket, the previous generation of the handheld. Initially you would think that the King of Fighters series would not look or play well on a portable system, but this is not the case with this game. Not only does King of Fighters Round 2 put on a decent graphical display, but it manages to capture enough of its Neo Geo Arcade's counterpart's gameplay to be a really fun experience. King of Fighters Round 2 makes a good on-the-go fighter. The game features solid controls and a fairly decent roster of fighters. This is definitely one of the must-own Neo Geo Pocket Color titles. Speaking of fighting games with large fighting rosters, let's take a look at SNK vs Capcom, the Match of the Millennium. This one features a total of 26 characters from SNK and Capcom, 8 of which are hidden. Play options include 2 fighter tag teams, 3 fighter Q teams, and of course, 1-on-1. After that, the player can choose either a Capcom style level gauge, an SNK style charge gauge, or a neutral meter that enhances super attacks if full. The Match of the Millennium is capable of linking with such other games as the Card Fighters Clash series and even the Dreamcast version of Capcom vs SNK, but the only purpose this serves, sadly, is data transfer. The use of both companies' material is quite extensive, from every character having their own themes playing to featuring of stages from both universes. The sheer amount of diversity in this game makes it another must-have fighting game for the system. Every system has its rare sought-after games. You know the ones. These are the games in which collectors clamour for. The great games usually released in short supply at the end of systems' life cycles. Facile is a game that fills that role on the Neo Geo Pocket Color. The only place this game was released in the entire Western world was my home of the United Kingdom. Yeah! Thessaly is a turn-based strategy RPG where instead of controlling several characters to perform a single action in alternating turns, you control one character, who is a giant mecha for several actions in each turn. If you've ever played Skies of Arcadia's ship-to-ship battles, which also require the queuing of actions, you'll have a fair idea of how this all works. It's apparent developer Saknoff was very fond of this project, because it's clearly being developed with such a lot of passion. The game features complex and well thought out strategy mechanics, a great battle system, several cinematic cutscenes, plus some extremely detailed and gorgeous sprite work. Overall, this game is incredibly absorbing and certainly deserving of its high price tag. So, that was 5 of the Neo Geo Pocket Color's games for you. There was only 83 games released for the system in total, but there are enough decent games to make the library worth exploring. The Neo Geo Pocket Color wasn't a bad little system at all. Unfortunately though, it was just another system in the long list of casualties who have attempted to compete with Nintendo's undefeatable handhelds. The Game Boy Color drove the nail into the Neo Geo Pocket Color's coffin, just like the original Game Boy did to the Sega Game Gear and Atari Lynx years prior. The handheld's lifespan may have been short, but in my opinion it is worth tracking one down. It is always fun to play on historic handhelds that haven't got the generic Nintendo branding written all over them. The platform is a great bit of kit with extensive battery life, high quality visuals and a reasonable software library. So, is the Neo Geo Pocket Color worth playing today? It most certainly bloody well is. Thank you for watching today's video. I have just entered a whole new hemisphere of the world and I look to continue to bring you regular content about all sorts of games and gaming platforms from around this world. Shoutouts to Jarrett Tolzien, Mad Ape Productions, Andreas Larsson, Peter Sidorn and all of my other patrons. Thank you all for your support. Yeah! If you want to be added to this prestigious list, then check out my Patreon page. Ta-ta and farewell.